All right, hey, welcome back, y'all. And I want to introduce you to a term you may not have heard of, skimpflation. So we've all heard of inflation. We know what that is, the slow eroding of the value of a dollar, represented typically in the increase in prices. And we certainly can look at our data now and see that with 2021, inflation has really started to go up. Now, it's not terrible compared to periods of our history where we've had like 11%, 14% inflation. We're at 5 something right now. It's not the end of the world, but it's notable. Now, part of this is that as we come out of the pandemic recession, government data will show us that our GDP is actually above where it was in 2019. So the economy is recovering, but it doesn't feel like it. The general news and the data that's out there doesn't feel like it, certainly with millions of jobs left unfilled and this decreasing value of our dollar, the increase in inflation, it doesn't feel like it. And people are starting to put a word on it to kind of represent what we see. And actually, they're using a couple different words. And the one I really like is skimpflation. Now, I'm going to provide a link to an NPR article that really goes through this in a little bit of detail. I read this a few days ago on a local news site, and what the heck? It was very short, didn't have a lot of information, so I had to go looking for it. And it seems this term is gaining some traction. And I really like it. And what's cool is the NPR article talks about a guy who is actually an economist and trying to quantify this kind of stuff. He noticed it and then started to really dig a little bit deeper into it. But what is skimpflation? Well, it's pretty simple. You're going out, you're going to a hotel, you're going to a restaurant, you're going somewhere, and you're not getting the quality of service that you used to. Restaurants are having trouble finding staff, hotels are understaffed. The example that's brought up many times, I found out, is that Disney World and Disneyland were not providing tram service from the parking lots to the front of Disney World. So people were having to walk, and they viewed this as corporate greed, right? That it wasn't an issue of coronavirus, the pandemic, the shutdown. It was an issue of the company simply not investing in people to actually go run the trams. Now, they've brought it back at least from their hotels. I don't know if they've brought it back from the actual parking lots yet. But as you look deeper, you start to see this more and more. Again, in the article, the example they brought up actually was you go to a hotel, and when they once promised a hot breakfast, now you get, you've got your prepackaged Raisin Bran and some, room temperature milk. There's a wrapped package with a bear claw in it or something like that instead of bacon, eggs, and whatever else they may have offered. And I've seen this, but it never jumped into my brain what I was actually noticing here. It's a general cutback in services because of labor shortages and because of corporations cutting back, maybe because visitors, because customers have not rebounded, right, to where they once were. Now, there's another term in here, shrinkflation, which is not unusual. And I've noticed it too, and that is certainly with like restaurants. They're feeling the pressure of increased cost of the food they have to buy to produce from, right? They have less staff, maybe they have slightly less customers, but they actually start shrinking portion sizes. They don't want you to pay more, they don't want to ask you to pay more, so they just shrink the portions a little bit to kind of make up the difference in how much extra the raw ingredients are costing. That's just one example, but there's many more, and I think we'll probably see more of this in some prepackaged items, a bag of chips and cereals and things like that. Now, according to the federal government, they believe that a lot of what we're seeing right here is is transitory, right? I think the inflation is largely driven by supply chain disruptions more than anything else, more than the monetary policy of what's going on. And those supply chain disruptions are what is driving up the prices of meats and produce. It's what's leading to just everything being more expensive. And not quite sure what's going to break loose the log jam in the labor right now. If it is a continuing increase in salaries that are paid, which I do kind of expect, it's either going to make permanent shrinkflation or it's going to start raising prices on certainly things like prepared meals in hotels and things like that. So add this to your list of new words. Be curious to see how this turns out. But what I want to hear from you is if you've seen examples of this, if you've seen your portion size shrink when you go out to eat, or if you've seen a definite decrease in service between 2019 and 2021 because of staffing levels or whatever it happens to be. I'm curious because federal studies, right? Economists, they have trouble defining, they have trouble quantifying something like this. They do a pretty good job with inflation. They do measurements, metrics about increases in quality, but they really don't cover customer service and how that's being impacted by the other factors in our economy. Love to hear from you if you've had some problems with this stuff, guys. Thanks for being here.